tell us when we're live.
Okay, you're live.
Good afternoon. So this is day 6 of our virtual meeting, and we have 2 agenda items today. It's great that you're with us again. The 2 agenda items is the approval of the minutes from previous meetings, and then we're going to turn to what we hope is the approval of ISA 600 revised group audits. Before we turn to 600, I figured we could deal with the minutes. They've been posted, obviously, on a website. The team tells me we've received no comments, and I'm talking about the minutes from our September and our October board meetings. And so I would propose we approve them both simultaneously unless there's objections. Okay, could we get just by show of hands who approves the minutes of the meeting in September and October? Are we Kai, Uwe, are you okay? So I wanted to make sure we got we're unanimous on that, so let the record show. So Len, we're at the big moment for 600. I've reviewed the latest revision, and I have to remark there weren't that many since last time. But I'll turn it over to you to lead us in this discussion and as we approach approval.
Yeah, thank you, Tom. I thought this day will never come because it was seven years ago we issued the ITC this month. So I know this project is going on for 6, but the ITC actually went out 7 years ago this week. So thank you, Tom, and I appreciate the task force. Actually, we met after they left on Thursday, and all the activities that task force have conducted since that Thursday. Really appreciate all their work, and also appreciate the comments we received. And we only had one consultation on Sunday, but that was also very, very helpful. So with that, I want to walk through some of the changes we made, and changes are in response to comments raised by the board in last Thursday's session, unless otherwise indicated in my remark. So with that, I'm going to start going through the changes. There are only 3 very minor changes in the requirement section. The first one is paragraph 26B. We added back reference to the group auditor's firm. Remember, we actually deleted the firm by mistake, so just added it back. Paragraph 41, we reverted to previous wording to remove component auditor from the shall requirement we discussed last Thursday. Then lastly, paragraph 45, we deleted for each component from that sentence, which we also agreed on Thursday in the plenary session. So those are the 3 minor changes in the requirement section. And there are a few in the application material. First one is A29. We deleted last sentence in response to an offline comment that it was redundant with the first sentence. Then the next change will be A32, A33. We made some changes for clarity reasons based on the feedback in the plenary session on Thursday. The next one will be A39A. We did not add the reference to level or degree of restrictions. The task force discussed and noted that it is implicit in considering whether restrictions are inconsistent with management's assertions. Next one is A59. We deleted the last sentence in response to an offline comment that it implied a group auditor could evaluate the component auditor's competencies and capability through a confirmation. Next one is A67. deleted the last part of the paragraph in response to an offline comment that it is unnecessary. In these circumstances, the group auditor cannot use the work of the component auditor. Next one will be A89, revise the wording of the 8th bullet in response to an offline comment, expressing a concern about the reference to challenging. Next one, A29, added wording to link back to the procedures being performed in response to identify risks of material misstatements. A153, we reinstate a subheading above A153. That was deleted by mistake in the previous draft. And last one in the application material is A171. This is the one we discussed at last Thursday's meeting. So the changes we made are deleted the wording from the 4th bullet based on what's the discussion on Thursday. And regarding the last bullet, in response to board input from the consultations, the task force revised and streamlined the wording that was added in the draft circulated on Friday. It was noted that the previous wording was repetitive of the intro wording in the paragraph. The revised wording now provides a more specific example of how the group auditor's involvement may change and why. Also, a board member noted that this is the only place in the standard where the construct involvement with component auditors is used. So the task force proposed change this involvement in the work of component auditors to be consistent with paragraph 13C in the objectives paragraph. And lastly, there's one minor change in Appendix 1. We delete a paragraph at the end of the auditor's report because it is already included in the footnote 1 of the appendix. So with that, I walked through all the changes we made to the standards. I'll turn back to you, Tom.
Thank you, Len. Thank you for the comprehensive overview. So I want to ask the board members if you have anything that you wish to raise right now before we proceed to the conforming consequential amendments. Give it a second. Okay, I think you could proceed.
Okay, there's only one change in the conforming and consequential amendments. It is on page 5, and it's related to ISO 220 revised application material paragraph A54. It is based on an offline comment, revised the wording to refer to understanding the group and its environment. So this minor change editorial in A54 of ISO 220. So with that, turn back to you, Tom.
I'll ask the same question of the board as I just did on the requirements and application material as it relates to ISO 600. Does anyone have anything that they wish to raise before we proceed? I see no hands. Now, I just want to note for the record that not raising points right now is not a reflection of lack of interest and discussion on this document. This has certainly been a long and deliberate process where we've gotten lots of input. So we're just at the final stage. Okay, Len, I think we're at the moment that I want to get your statement on due process.
Thank you, Tom. In the task force view, the significant matters it has identified as a result of its deliberations since the beginning of this project and its considerations thereon have been reflected in the agenda material presented to the IAASB at its meetings. In the task force view, there are no significant matters it has discussed in this project that have not been brought to the IAASB's attention. The task force does not believe that further field testing of the proposals holding a public forum or roundtable or issuing a consultation paper are warranted, given the input from the stakeholders and liaison with various stakeholders, including regulators and auditors, over the course of the project as a whole. Agenda number 2 presents a task force analysis of whether proposed ISA 600 revised needs to be re-exposed. Agenda item 2E shows a comparison of the requirements of ED 600 with the requirements shown in agenda item 2C. In the task force's view, there's no need to re-expose the standards. Thank you, Tom.
Thank you, Len. I think that I'll ask Vili for the technical director's report on due process now.
Thank you, Tom. So I refer board members and official observers to agenda item 5, which is titled Due Process Proposed ISA 600 Revised. And this agenda item sets out, as stated in its objective, the status of due process followed in relation to this project under headings that address background and due process up to the date of the December 2021 IAASB meeting. I advise that due process has been followed effectively and with proper regard for the public interest in relation to the development of ISA 600 revised, special considerations, audits of group financial statements, including the work of component auditors, up to as well as during the December 2021 IAASB meeting. So Tom, at this stage, we can proceed to the vote.
Okay, thank you, Vili, and thank you, Len, for those comments. I just want to, before we proceed, ask if anyone has objections on voting on both the standard or the consequential and conforming amendments jointly. And does anyone object to that? Okay, we're going to do that jointly, so let the record note that. Or is the board ready to vote? Okay, and is it clear what you're being asked to vote for, which is the approval of ISA 600 revised and the conforming and consequential amendments? Okay, everyone's nodding, no one's objecting. So what I'd like to do is, by show of digital hands, and Len, you and I'll do physical because I'm not sure that you have capacity. Oh, actually, you're on your individual one, so we could do it. To show anyone who abstain from voting in support the approval of the standard and the consequential and conforming amendments. Any abstentions? Let the record show no votes for abstentions. How about people who would vote against the approval of the standard? I showed 0 votes against. So that leads us, let's see if our math is pretty good here. Who votes in favor of the approval of the standard and the consequential and conforming amendments? Okay, with me, it's 18 votes for. Okay, so we will not take the normal step of asking anyone who voted against why the rationale is. And so the next thing we need to do is vote about re-exposure, right? If I know, right? So Len, I think you basically told us whether you think re-exposure is necessary, but do you need to say anything again on the topic?
No, Tom, we can proceed straight to the vote.
Okay. So do any members believe re-exposure is required? First, abstentions of this vote? 0. Anyone voting believes that it is required, is in favor of requiring re-exposure? 0. anyone believes re-exposure is unnecessary, raise their hands. Okay, I think we're at 18 for that. So re-exposure is unnecessary. So the proposed, Len, I think I have to ask you now about the effective date of the standard and the proposed effective date, which of course we just talked about at the September 2021 meeting. So I think you just need to note it for the public record where we landed on the effective date.
Thank you, Tom. Based on the discussion that took place in September meeting, the board decided the effective for the audits of group financial statement for the periods beginning on or after December 15th, 2023.
Is there any observations or comments on that from the board? I think we've discussed this pretty thoroughly over a series of meetings, so I'm not surprised that there's full support for that proposal. So full support for the effective date. Thank you, Len. So all I have to do right now is to thank the board for your support and input throughout this process, and really to congratulate Len, the ISO 600 task force, all the staff involved. We have Dan and Jasper and Billy and the board in general for the approval of the standard. Len, this is a great accomplishment for you and the committee. And we will ask if you have any comments in response.
Yeah, thank you, Tom. You allow me to say a few words. I really appreciate the board support with that vote. I want to thank a few people. I'm going to start with the people who are not on this call. At this project, I'm the third chair of this project. Megan Zietzman, Bob Dora before me, but also the past task force member, Rich Shako, and also in the original working group, there was another person from Deloitte Hong Kong practice, Derek Broccoli, was very much involved. And of course, Arnold and Kathleen Healy at the beginning of the ITC project, the role they played. But also Fiona Campbell, ISO 315 task force and staff, and then Merrick Bogowski, at the early stages project being very supportive. And also the regulator community and national standard setters, CAG and the GIMS leadership has been very supportive. And I also want to mention that I see our PRB member Janine is on the call. I just want to say to Janine that about 15 years ago, Janine and I worked on the ISO 600 common letter. So I'm actually really happy for Janine to return to see the conclusion of this project, because in the IAASB meeting, we debated on the old 600 will change practice, and fast forward 15 years later, we're in a different role, and what goes around comes around. So I'm happy that Janine is here today. Then I'm going to thank Tom and Willie. This is the first project, both of you, from start of ED to approval of a final standards. I think that's the first standards that both of you are involved from beginning to the end. So really appreciate the input, and Tom, Willie, the number outreach and the support, and Willie throughout the process with the technical input. Really appreciate all the support, and reach out to PIOB and other stakeholders. Then I'm going to thank the quality management task forces and staff, particularly Julie and Karen French and Enron and Lynn, particularly Lynn, because in our ISO 220 work, Lynn was very accommodating. That so many paragraphs in 220, she allowed us, and particularly Josephine, in terms of how 600 and 220 is going to work together. So thank you to the quality management task force chairs and staff and members for all the help. And also just want to highlight that ISA 315, this standard is very much based on 315 and all the help we got from the 315 task force. That's also on the 600 task force. Some of the individual board members, Sashiko, Qingwei, Roger, and your TA in my travel, you're so willing to engage me personally when I go to Singapore, Australia, and Japan, taking your time to provide input. And Isabel, we can never forget the tobacco shop examples, because I think it's going to be in the folklore of the IAASB 600 project. And Kai Wu-wei, I want to thank you for your passion about Germany, the laws and regulations. You made that point very clear. And with Wolf insisting us to address that. So I'm sure, hopefully the German stakeholders will be happy. And Kai Hogan, this is one project that is not in the LCE, but as well the process, it being very supportive and also in communication with us. Diane, Sue, and Wendy, practitioners' input. I'm just amazed at some of the things that you guys go through in your practice and help us to make the standard clearer. And a number of great suggestions from three of you, I do appreciate. Fernando Technology Group helping us in looking at some of the how technology impact group audit, the common controls. So I'll go back to my task force working group. I must say, I'm feeling very guilty about chairing this task force because I really don't think I deserve all the task force members and staff here. When you look at Dora, and I'm sure she's on the call, I saw her photo. Dora, Wolf, and Josephine and I had been on this journey, 6 years ago. And I think this is something that, unfortunately, we can't really celebrate in person, but there's a lot of things we went through in those 6 years. So I'm so happy that you continue to be here. And Eric, from the national standard setter perspective, very helpful input, also from CUP's perspective, keep us straight in terms of how we explain or express what we mean in the standards. And also for Edo being a group engagement partner in a multinational audit. Edo and Jamie is just amazing in terms of giving us a real life example how group engagement team fulfill their responsibility in managing group audits. So I have a couple of people I really want to thank is Josephine and Susan. And Josephine and Susan, through different roles, we kind of know each other for about 15 years. And I'm just having tears in my eyes. Without both of them, it's very hard not get this thing done. And Josephine and Susan really appreciate all the work you provided and personal support. And I'm going to turn to the staff, and Jasper had to put up with my access and restriction issues all the time, dialing from China. And during this period that, Jasper's family also caught COVID. So it was very tough for Jasper in the past 18 months or so. And, it's just amazing that Jasper is always by my side. And lastly, Dan, I don't know how to say about Dan. What I can say is 17 years ago, I was a young SEC observer observing a ASB meeting. And Dan was sitting right across from me with John Fogarty and other ASB legends. And I can tell you, I was so intimidated at that meeting because everything Dan said, I have no clue what he said. I was totally lost. And Dan has been a personal mentor on this project. And I think the title "Mr. Fixed It" is an understatement. So I'm really glad I have Dan as former deputy chair of the IAASB. on this journey with us. So thank you, Dan. And then lastly, there's one person I want to thank you on record. Some of you may know her, Jessie Wong, because all the stuff I have to do for IAASB, she's the one who's mopping up all my mess back home in China. So I just want to acknowledge her contribution. So thank you, Tom, for allowing me a few more minutes to thank everyone who supported this project in the last 6 years. Thank you very much, Tom. Turn back to you.
Thank you, Len. Almost at this point, we would normally break out champagne to celebrate this great success, but we'll have to live with virtual applause or actual applause. But thank you and all the team for getting us through this and completing this important project. I think it's appropriate now for me to call upon Jim Dowkin as the CAG observer, to see if you have any observations.
Thanks, Tom. And I guess I'll continue with Len's thanks to everyone. But my thanks are in the sense that there were a number of comments from the CAG over the last several years. And I think the task force has really considered them in this final standard. And that's where I'll end it here. Thanks.
Thank you. And Janine, from the PIOB perspective, but I didn't realize how important of a role you had. Maybe it exceeded this final result a decade and a half ago. But I call on you, not in that role, but as the PIOB observer, for any observations that you have as we conclude the 600 project.
Yes, thanks, Tom. And Len, indeed, it was a long time ago that we first debated within IOSCO the group audit standard, and also where it should be strengthened or could be strengthened. And also later on, when I started to work with other regulators, audit regulators in IFIAR, but also in the European setting, I can still recall the first time that I had to present the collective findings from the audit regulators to Arnold Schilder. It was in Oslo, in Norway, where we actually asked him to consider the outcomes from the audit inspections, and that there was really a need to strengthen ISA 600, because in practice it was not always understood well, at least that could be the case, or auditors did not do the things that were expected from them. I just leave that in the middle, but it was a reason for reaching out to the IAASB. And well, many years later, there's finally this big milestone. I like to congratulate you all with this achievement, that there is a revised ISA 600. And it's an important standard. And I'm happy that I can say also on behalf of the PIOB that our public interest issues that as PIOB we have discussed and brought to your attention, that those have been covered, and that we are very happy that this standard is now approved. And we have, of course, like you will all have as well, high expectations that this will really strengthen the group audits in practice and the behavior of the group auditor vis-a-vis the component auditors. So we're very happy together with you that this standard is approved now, and now we have to wait till it will be implemented. And may I also take the opportunity on behalf of the PIOB, thank the outgoing board members. There was this very nice farewell party, farewell, not a party, but farewell session last week. And I also like to thank them for their dedication, contributions to the IAASB, their work in the public interest. It's much appreciated. So thank you, and I wish you all the best.
Thank you, Janine. Really appreciated. So Billy, I have to ask you, because our work as a full board is done here, but there's a little bit more work to get 600 published. Can you give a sense of what our next steps are?
Yes, thank you, Tom. So what we'll do in the next couple of days, we just need to give Jasper a chance to get home as well. We will post onto the meetings webpage the final text of the standard as it was approved today. We will then proceed to do a final scrub of the standard. Sometimes we pick up minor editorials, cross-referencing, and some minor points on internal consistency. We will finalize the standard in a nice format with the cover page and everything as you used to see. Parallel with that, we will also develop the basis for conclusions, which we've already started to work on, but we will finalize that. And then, as our normal practice is, we will circulate that to the board offline for any of your comments to finalize the basis for conclusions. And we will have to get all of that ready for our final submission to the PIOB, who meets at the beginning of April, is their first meeting in 2022 for the PIOB's approval of due process, at which point we can then publish the final two documents. But like I said, the final text, as we've approved it today, will be available on the meetings webpage in the next couple of days.
And of course, that will allow our stakeholders to begin preparations. I think we gained some confidence too from the PIOB's remarks earlier about a smooth approval. So the next thing I'd like to do is bring the meeting to a close. And Janine, you made some closing remarks, but I wanted to offer you the opportunity to reflect on the totality of our meetings over the last week and a half, if you'd like to, as the first time in the PIOB observer role.
Yes, thanks, Tom. Yeah, this is indeed the first time. I think I already said that, and you all know, of course, because this was the first time that you saw me in this capacity. For me, it was very interesting to see the whole, well, at least the plenary sessions of the whole board meeting. I had been before, I think only twice to present to the IAASB board in the past, but that's very different than you're only for half a day or one day at such a meeting. I thought there was a lot of, what I understood, a lot of comments. We also discussed over our own PIB meeting with Tom that in the at the first meeting on last Monday, I understood there were many comments sent in. I believe it was on the fraud project plan. And I was thinking, hey, that's a lot, but they were not, of course, all discussed here and debated. So we talked about it a little bit. So for me, that was an observation that I had, like, how does the process work outside of the plenary session? So Tom explained that. My takeaway, so to say, from the whole observing the whole meeting is that there is a discussion on topics, on comments that people bring to the table here. Tom leads it very well, gives a lot of opportunity for people to comment, which is important, of course. And it's nice when you're observing that you then also hear and see that there are people reacting when they feel the need to do that, and that there is room for that. So yeah, from that perspective, I learned a lot about the proceedings during this such a meeting, and you can only learn that by being present. So I liked it a lot. So thanks. I have no other comments.
Thank you, Janine. And thank you for the compliments. But the board is what makes this. The board definitely made it a rich discussion this week. So I'm glad. that people could see that we are unafraid to take on sometimes contentious issues where there's disagreement and come to a good conclusion, as we've done on many topics the last week and a half. Jim Dowkin, from the CAG perspective, would you like to share any observations?
Thanks, Tom. I think this week we've had a number of important topics, particularly I think the fraud and making progress in terms of having a project on the fraud. I think it's very important, and I'm very happy to see 600 out. So thank you for all your hard work done by the IAASB. Thank
you, Jim, and thank you for your continued leadership of the CAG. It's really appreciated. So really, I just want to thank everyone who's been involved with this meeting, board, staff, TAs, all the, as I said last week, all the people behind the scenes that do all the work that makes this meeting go as smoothly as it did. With the complexity, so it's easier to run it all Zoom meeting, or easier to run it all in-person meeting. We got a little bit of both throughout. So thanks to the IFAC and the IAASB team who helped us with all the arrangements. So I really think it's important to note that. So next things to know, we finished one set of minutes. Another set of minutes from this meeting will be posted in due course for their approval at the March 2022 meeting. For the first quarter of the year, we have a placeholder for a meeting on February 8th. The necessity of that meeting and all the details around that meeting, if we decide to go ahead with it, will be shared in due course. We are scheduled for our next plenary sessions from March 14th to 18th. Details, obviously, really difficult to finalize anything right now, considering the environment that we live in. The hope is at minimum that we could have a hybrid meeting, but maybe something more regular, but that will be dictated by sort of the COVID facts on the ground, as they say. So we'll keep you posted and try to give everyone adequate time to do planning. The next IAASB CAG meeting is scheduled for March 8th and 9th. It's almost a certainty that will be virtual. The reason I say that is even if we were in a hybrid session, due to social distancing requirements, it would be very difficult to fit anyone in one physical location. So the assumption is that will be a virtual meeting. So more on that too to be confirmed shortly. So just a reminder, we'll post papers for the video conference if it happens on February 8th, at least 7 to 10 days in advance. For the March meeting, all materials will begin posting on February 14th with an end date of February 25th, 2022. So, Vili, anything you want to add from a staff perspective?
No, thank you, Tom. That's all.
So I would be remiss in saying once again, Imran and Roger, how much we've appreciated you as board members and colleagues, and most importantly as friends during your tenures on the board. We will really miss you in the coming weeks and months as this board progresses, but I know you won't be silent observers to the process as well. So that gives me some comfort that we will be in regular contact still. So thank you. And for everyone else, as we reach the end of the year, we've been through an extraordinary 2 years together. And it's almost as I near the end of what hopes to be my first term. But I appreciate everything that the group has done to pull together in tough circumstances and continue to put our strategy and the public interest first. We've gotten a lot done. Let's just say, having passed our work plan last week, we have a lot more to accomplish, and we owe it to everyone that we keep the momentum alive. But happy holidays, get some rest. I look forward to seeing everyone in the new year's. Thank you, and we'll speak to you soon.